remember the 5th Quickie episode of the Recreational Critics podcast. I'm your host, Jason, with my co-host,
James.
And this week we're going over V for Vendetta, hence the very cringy opening to this episode.
I liked it.
With it being our 5th episode and the plot being on November 5th, I thought it was kind of fitting. Another reason I wanted to cover this movie specifically was what's going on in the real world. You know, we have a virus, and we have political unrest. We have what people believe to be out there.
Authoritarianism.
Thank you. And not quite totalitarian, right? But authoritarianism. And we just have what are riots and calls for change, right? Not so much to the anarchy levels, unless you're talking about Seattle. And it just depends on what side of the political spectrum you're on, right? In that regard. But it's more of freedom fighting, right? And I think this movie fits a lot of those roles of what's going on in the real world today. Top of which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I talk about it all the time.
It's pretty fantastic.
It is a fantastic movie. So this movie came out in 2006. I didn't watch it until 2012.
Really?
Yeah. And I think I tried to watch it at one point and I was like kind of like put off by it. I was young.
It's a slow burn.
It is. And if you're a young guy who's like not into government, not into politics, or not into like those themes, you're like, oh, this is no big deal. Then I read the graphic novel and then read the movie. I watched the movie, you know, and I was like, God, this movie is perfect. The only thing I have against it, and this is from a graphic novel fan kind of thing, you know, is when you start reading comics, you kind of get your own voice. Same with books, right? You get your own voice for the characters in your head. And those voices don't fit very well to the movie. So Watchmen's a very good example of this. This movie surpassed my... James gave him a big yawn. He doesn't like this already. This movie surpassed my expectation. Hugo Weaving plays the main character of V so fucking good. It's wild. So he wears that porcelain anonymous mask, Guy Fawkes mask, the entire time. Before the days of Anonymous, if you will. And he wears this Guy Fawkes mask, and he just, you feel emotion, you feel acting, you feel personification of a man behind a mask.
And the small head tilts and things like that.
How he stands, how he moves.
Yes.
The head tilts especially. And it's not
the face never moves, but it's almost like you can see the facial expression in it.
And he doesn't even have a face. That's the other wild thing. Like the character himself, V, doesn't have a face. He's a faceless man, right? And that's another thing. Like even when he's faceless without the mask, you still feel it. Like that moment when they zoomed in on his face, you know, and he had no eyes or whatever. It's fucking wild. And Natalie Portman's also good in this. William Hurt is good in this.
Stephen Fry is great in
John
this.
Hurt. John Hurt. Thank you. William Hurt's General Ross in the Marvel movies. John Hurt, rest in peace. He's great in this. Everyone's great in this. But just the level they took this role to, that Hugo Weaving especially, just is remarkable. If anyone's into movies about anarchy and totalitarianism and like a future dystopian future, if you will, I highly recommend this movie. If you want to get into the plot of this.
Yeah. So this one's pretty short as well. In a future British tyranny, a shadowy freedom fighter known only by the alias of V plots to overthrow it with the help of a young woman.
So that young woman being Natalie Portman,
yes.
And V is played by the incredible Hugo Weaving. So one of the things of this movie is it's written by graphic novel author Alan Moore, who dismisses its existence completely. He's a crazy guy.
He does that with every movie.
He does, and he does it because they kind of tweak it a little bit, and he can't even get mad. So I listened to this thing on it one time. He sold all the rights to DC for these movies and these books because he needed the money, right? And now he wants to come back and go, well, these aren't my films, these aren't my, my stories. Like, no, man, you sold the rights. Like, you lost everything.
He never has anything constructive to say about it either.
He doesn't. He just
it's
says
not
it's
like
not what
I really felt like they missed this. It's never anything like that. It's just like, that's not what I would have done.
With this movie, he did have a little bit of a gripe. He thought it changed the narrative and the point of being fighting fascism and totalitarian states, versus freedom fighting. So that the book, I don't know if you ever read it. If you like to borrow it, I have it in the closet right behind you. He really focuses on fascism. And so there's a lot of the storytelling is from the government perspective and like the people perspective of the government, which you kind of get in this movie a little bit. But the movie mostly focuses on V and Evie, played by Natalie Portman, fighting against the government, or him kind of crippling the organization from the outside, piece by piece. And I don't know, it's just different. And this movie is different, and it's so good, and it's shot beautifully too. All the explosions, all the action, the rain, the music, the darkness, all of it kind of fits.
And this is the first movie that James McTeague directed.
What other movies has he directed?
Not a lot.
Okay.
Ninja Assassin, The Raven, Caserta Palace Dream,
All right.
Survivor
Mm-hmm.
as a Pierce Brosnan movie,
Yep.
and then some TV stuff.
Okay. Well, if this is the first movie he did, he set the bar too high for him to follow.
Yes, he did.
So I credit this movie to being one of my top 3 movies of all time. And a lot of it is because of Hugo Weaving's acting, but it's also because of the writing of it all. The movie is paced. It has a drag to it, sure, but it all fits. The plot fits with it. I think the only other thing that gets me is that symbolism part with the dominoes. He's flipping them over, and you watch the whole country crumble kind of thing. I'm like, oh, shut up. Like, that was stupid, that symbolism behind it kind of thing, because all the dominoes were in one piece, but there's one domino standing up, and he picks it up and goes, what's this piece mean? Like, you're not magical. Those dominoes aren't magic. Shut the fuck up. And on top of that, when you zoom out, when the dominoes first fall, there's like 7 of them standing up, and then when it comes back to that scene, there's just the one.
Yep.
So you know some guy in the filming walked over and knocked all those dominoes down.
Shit.
And then Hugo Weaving got up and like picked up the one or whatever.
It was like they did it twice, and they were like, I'm not doing it again. Just go knock him over.
Or imagine having to put all those dominoes up.
Oh, yeah.
What a monster. What a terrible job. That would suck. Because it's thousands of dominoes, which represent like one person in the country. So the movie takes place in England, and it's the year 2025 or somewhere around that time frame, right? And basically this very right-winged government took over, and they took over after a virus decimated their country. And then you fast forward to you meet the character V, who's a freedom fighter blowing up old government buildings and statues and stuff like that, who's like trying to tear down the government piece by piece. And you don't quite know his motive as to why, and then you find out he's the reason the virus exists. So he was part of an experiment by that government to make a biological weapon, and they persecuted the gays and the Jews and the black people and all kinds of people, different like minority groups that the government didn't like. Very Hitler Nazi-esque, if you will.
Yep.
And they use his blood specifically to create this virus, because they're trying all kinds of different things on him, and he creates all kinds of antigens, immunities and all kinds of stuff. They then take that virus and they use it on their own people. Right? So they fabricated their own virus that killed like 500,000 people. Or no, I think it was 500 million. Something crazy.
It's a big number.
Yeah, something wild. And it killed kids, all kinds of stuff. And so when this government was then elected that year, they had a cure come out immediately. So like the whole point was like, how do we create fear? We create fear through a virus. Well, how do we create power? Is we cure the virus. And how do we create or not power? How do we create, trust? And that's through curing the virus. Well, they cured the virus, created order, to all the chaos. At which point then people open arms, took this government in, and now the government controls them. To the point curfews, taps on everything of yours. You can't talk bad about the government. The government controls the media, blatantly, all kinds of stuff. And it's just different. It's very Spectre-ish, very Illuminati kind of thing. And they're like the last stand against the rest of the world kind of thing. Like the rest of the world went to chaos. Very North Korea in that sense too. It's interesting the kind of things this thing all tugs at, like 1984 style.
Yep.
And I think this comic book came out, I'm going to look it up real quick, came out around the same time as 1984. But go ahead if you want to say anything.
No, I don't have a lot to expand on. I mean, you're so passionate about this movie that you pretty much nailed anything that I was going to say.
It's just me going on a rant about how good this movie is at this point.
The relationship that develops between V and Evie and the way that it's shot and the slow burn, it's just really well done.
Yeah.
They did a great job casting this one.
Yes.
It's the part that I'm the most impressed with, because it can't be easy to act across from a person wearing a mask. Yeah. And and
you can tell Natalie Portman's actor, or as an actress, she feels something for this character.
Yep.
And that's just, it's very somber and it's very real, and it's hard to fathom like how well they did. When you really start to think about it, when I started to, I'm like, God, he's wearing a mask.
Yep. How
the fuck is he wearing a mask? And he's so good.
And the super small things about him taking his glove off when he's cooking and things like that.
And he's putting it on, like hiding his burns. Like he's embarrassed, It's
yeah,
awesome.
You got this guy who can, take out an entire building full of people. He's like borderline superhero. Right. And then just like, oh, forgot my glove.
Yeah, and he's like, oops, sorry, I didn't mean for you to see that. And he's really big into the arts, and he's really big into culture. And he wants to bring back the freedom and the culture that came with it.
Yep.
And he did that.
There's a sincerity to his character, and it just draws you in.
There's also a little bit of, psychotic tendencies to it. I mean, he's been a man who's been burned alive, blew up, beaten, poisoned. I mean, you name it, incarcerated and prosecuted. He doesn't remember his old life at all. All he remembers is I'm who I am, and I'm gonna do what I have to do to take out this government. And he knows he has a vendetta, but against this government, and he's not quite sure why.
Yep.
And you're not quite sure who he is. And I think one of the good things they do, they don't focus on who he was before.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because it could be anyone, and they make that a point at the very end when people who have been killed in the movie are alive at the end, you know? And it's kind of this weird thing of like, is this all real? Is this like the whole, one of the main themes is anyone can be behind the mask. Very Batman-esque kind of thing. The novel came out in 1982. I don't know when the 1984 novel came out by George Orwell.
It was in the 50s.
Was it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't quite sure. 49.
Ah.
Yeah.
It's only off by a little bit.
Yep. It's good. It's a good movie. I don't really have much else to say about this movie other than I highly recommend it to anyone and everyone.
Yeah. This is one that you take time to watch.
I believe it's another 2-hour movie. I can check it real quick for everyone just so they know. Vendetta 2005, not 2006. I apologize. I was off on my dates earlier.
This movie is how everyone remembers my birthday.
Your birthday, November 5th?
Mm-hmm.
I knew that. 2 hours, 13 minutes. So kind of long, but it's very good. I don't know, they come out in 2006. Why did they 2005 over there? The internet just likes to mess with me. I don't think it gets as much credit as it should.
No, it doesn't.
It's very underrated, and I think that's because other big movies came out that year. Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith came out that year, which is a big movie. Yeah, and it is, right? And Batman Begins came out that year, and it's around the time of Superman Returns came out that year. So you got a lot of movies that came out at the same time, and you're like, how to...
It probably didn't do as well as it should have in the box office, but I think it's remembered very fondly.
Well, it says here it made $132 million in the box office, and the budget was $54 million, so it made over double its budget.
Yeah, it made money, but it didn't make Batman Begins money or anything like that.
Without a doubt.
It only has a 73% rating on Rotten Tomatoes with a 90% audience score.
Right. I think one of the things that people, like critics especially, will get on this movie about is its slow pace.
Yeah.
Is that what you're reading right now?
I was just looking through the ratings on it because I was like, this movie has to be remembered fondly, but for the most part it is.
It also says the finale is pretty bland. That's what some critics are saying right here. I'm reading. I can buy that. So the finale is basically his whole goal is to blow up Parliament, and so he spends a year cultivating this culture of people who want to fight the government. Reminding them like they can have their freedom back, and one way to do it is to just blow up this building. And the reason for blowing the building is the building's a symbol. You blow up the symbol, people rise, and people, and it's just that symbol behind revolution and what it means. One good quote in this, and I stand by this quote a lot, is the main investigator who's trying to find V the entire time. He's played by Stephen Rea. He Detective Finch, that's his name. And Chief Finch is trying to find this guy, and he makes a quote at one point because when his partner's like, "What do you think's gonna happen?" With all the riots going on and the planned attack on the 5th of November and stuff like that. And Chief Finch says what normally happens when people without guns fight people with guns. Mm-hmm. And it's always the people without guns win.
Yep.
And revolution's sakes, right? So I thought that was kind of one of those moments like, ooh, like you kind of feel that when he says it, and I don't know, it's just really good. It sticks with me all the time. But yeah, the main theme is definitely that the government shouldn't be afraid of the people shouldn't be afraid of the government. Government should be afraid of its people.
Yep.
And that's the driving force behind this movie.
All it takes is one domino.
And take 1,000 dominoes according to this movie. 'Cause that's what they had. So I got nothing else for this movie other than you should go watch it.
Indeed.
All right. Don't forget to check us out on Sunday for our full episode where we go over the news, what we watched this week, fan mail, and a movie of the week. This next week's movie will be The Five Bloods.
Yep.
But we appreciate you guys coming by and stopping in for this week's Quickie. Have a good one.
Have a good one, everybody.